Oh, well, good evening, Brendan.
Yeah, we are live. What happened to our jingle today? There we go. Okay. I used to like our jingle, but anyway, it's gone. Ollie, how are you?
Oh,
All good?
I'm fine, and I still see the jingle. So I don't know what's going on there. So what's coming
Okay.
up for us tonight, Brendan?
Well, yeah, we might as well get straight into it. So, coming up tonight on Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show, to borrow from Rihanna, it's all about work, 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 work. And that's the only singing I'll do tonight. Yes, we're going to chat about the various employment options open to foreigners who relocate to Colombia, from the classroom to the catwalk and everything else in between, as well as giving you an insight into what it's like to be an employee in an office here. Have you any interesting Colombian work stories to share? Are you working here in what might be seen as an unusual job? Let us know right now by using the comment facility on this Facebook Live. Or if you're watching this recorded, you can send a message to the Facebook page or tweet us using the handle at Bogotá Post. Firstly, as we always do, we'll take a look at what's been making the news in Colombia over the past week, which includes a discussion on the extension to the closure of border crossings and, in what has become a regular feature, our eye on James Rodríguez. We're delighted to see the Cúcuteño rediscovering his form at Everton. All that to come. But Ollie, we'd quite a shocking incident of violence against women in the rather cosmopolitan Chapinero area of Bogotá earlier in the week. What exactly happened?
Well, I mean, again, this hasn't been on the news today. It's something that happened yesterday and seems to have disappeared almost instantly from the headlines, which is quite worrying for me, I think. Basically, Brendan, there's a couple of women walking along in Chapinero Alto in ropa deportiva. So, I mean, I'm guessing they're wearing jogging bottoms, something like that. Probably maybe doing their running. It's not really clear. We haven't got the full details. And as they went by, a couple of men shouted out some comments. I can't remember exactly what they said, but the usual sort of sexist comment. At which
Well,
point,
I believe one of them was the female
Zorro, I
dog.
think. Yeah.
And
Oh,
female
yes,
dog.
Perez. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, and they came back to confront the men and say, like, this isn't acceptable. This isn't on. Please don't treat us like pieces of meat. At which point they got attacked with a stick and a knife. Injured as well. This wasn't a minor incident. And it seems to me very worrying that this isn't being this isn't making the news in a big way. It seems to be very much a secondary story. I mean, it's very difficult for me. I had a class earlier this week with some students. The frequency at which street abuse happens all over the world, I'm sure, is much higher than I would ever imagine. I'm in the privileged position of not having to put up with it. But the amount that I hear about here just seems to be off the scale. And, if we're in a situation where even highlighting the problem that this is going to cause you to be physically attacked, as we've seen in France in recent weeks, it seems like we're going backwards, Brendan.
Yeah, well, interesting. My former housemate, she was working for a few months up in Monterrey on the Caribbean coast. And she told me as well that she used to run in obviously very hot up in Monterrey. Everybody will be wearing shorts, and she go running in her shorts, and the amount of whistling and people kind of shouting things at her. I believe that it's even like it happens here. We see it all the time. I mean, I'm kind of amazed at the amount of beeps that the city bus drivers will give to women on the street and things like that. I don't know why, but I expect higher standards from city employees, as they kind of are, of public-private enterprises as these buses are. But anyway, that's probably me being naive. But in the coast, they say it's even worse. So this male-dominated, misogynistic mentality here, it's very deep, and it's unsettling, I guess, for people like us from Northern Europe that, we left that behind, I like to think, quite some time ago.
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think I like to think that too. I suspect, women that I know who have lived in England or indeed still live in England probably would tell me that it's very much not a thing of the past. I doubt you'd get attacked with sticks and a knife, though, in London, although there have been recent similar attacks in France, women wearing miniskirts and being attacked directly because of that in France over the last couple of weeks. So, maybe we shouldn't get on our high horses from there. But still, it's very worrying. And something that's also really worrying to me is the reaction afterwards. So the two women let the company that the men worked for know about this case, at which point said company said, look, we're going to investigate it, the normal story, promptly investigated it and sacked them both. At which point one of the woman who was kind of more active, let's say, on Twitter and Facebook, talking about the denuncia, she then said, well, we don't want people to lose their jobs. We just need more education. And to me, that's just, it's something I hear a lot in Colombia, this idea that, education is the key, that somehow magically education. I don't believe those men don't know what they're doing is wrong. I don't think they need to be told that they shouldn't be doing this. I think they absolutely know that it makes women uncomfortable, and that's in fact why they do it. What I would like to say is precisely the opposite. I don't think we do need any more education. We need to start acting on these things. And I'm fed up of it, and it's something I see with frightening regularity here. Cycling is a really good example of this. That time and time again, we see cyclists knocked off their bikes, severely injured or dead, and we hear the same, we need more education on how to drive correctly. No, we don't. We need car drivers going to jail. And it's the same thing here. We need to see, men have real consequences for these actions. I don't believe I don't believe it's an honest mistake. I don't think it's a communication misunderstanding. I think it's two people, taking advantage of the fact that no one's going to take this crime seriously. Well, unfortunately for them, the delivery company 472 did, and they've paid for it with their jobs. Good, frankly.
Yeah, and many more should, as you said. We would like to hear from people who might have any comments on this. Do let us know using the comment facility here, or if you're not listening to this as we're going out live, you can send us messages using the Twitter handle at Bogotá Post. But something that ties into what you're saying about like education, and it's not a case that they need more education. I was listening to a radio program today, and they were discussing, this was UK based, but they were talking about what the commentator was referring to as too much liberal education in schools these days, and they're letting too much go, and that we need to be a little bit stricter anymore with our use. We were kind of telling people, oh, well, you can do that, and there's no bold boys or girls corner anymore in schools and things like that. So I don't know what's the case in Colombia.
A bold boy?
Yeah, the bold boy, go into the corner. There's a corner over there, and you have to stand up if you did something bad. That used to happen in my school. So that maybe we're being too lenient with people when they're younger and they don't face the consequences. And something that came into my head from particularly in a Colombian case, I'm kind of guessing on this, but the Colombian mammy who sees their Juan or their Santiago or whatever, and overly protective of them doing this. So while they mightn't like it being aimed at them, but if definitely if their son does it, they're kind of more lenient towards it, or they laugh it off. So, and it's that vicious circle.
Again, that's there's definitely a blind spot, I think, of people treating things differently when it's somebody they know or somebody in their family, especially. The pernicious effects of family culture here, run very deeply, sure. But I guess we should move on. It's not the most, it's not a particularly pleasant topic, is it?
I mean, well, obviously, and look, we said we don't shy away from the uncomfortable things here, but it is interesting that it just never, it's kind of died as a news item.
Yes, that is weird. I mean, I find that very odd. I mean, I would have thought, because, as you said, the location of it, you kind of think this happening in Chapinero, you would think it would be more newsworthy, that it would generate more anger.
Yeah.
I guess people are inured to these things. Anyway, what's next up on the list?
Well, I'll just say, so if people, moving on, because in relation to people who are in between visas, or we're hoping to do a border run, because even though the migration offices have opened, they're only operating at 30% capacity, and they've got a 6-month backlog to deal with, and there's a number of issues at play in this. I've heard a number of stories of people having to do runners to Tunja and Neva because they're in an emergency. But if people had hoped that they could do a border run, they can't until the 1st of November at least, because the land borders are going to remain shut.
Seems odd. Seems very odd.
Considering flights are allowed in, that does seem a little bit odd.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and not just humanitarian flights. There was that report earlier today saying that a third of the people who have been flying into Colombia since we fully opened the airports are simple tourists. And it seems to me bizarre that there's so much, basic tourism has instantly come back. Especially
a third of 15,000, just to say. So in 11 days, 15,000, it doesn't seem too bad, does it? In terms of numbers.
Well, I mean, let's look at where they're coming from. I mean, Florida hasn't had a great COVID experience. Let's see what happens next. It does seem to me interesting, though. I mean, the underlying message seems to be flying in from the rich world is, the comparatively rich world is okay. Crossing the border from Ecuador and probably especially Venezuela, I would imagine, is the underlying focus for migration. Seems to me, I don't know, leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, Brendan.
Yeah, now, and of course, this comes from Migration, or at least the press release is related to this. Obviously, it's a government decision. But there are a few issues related to it, because it's very fresh in my mind. I know of a number of people here in Bogotá who, to me, this seems ridiculous. They have failed to renew visas or get residency or whatever. And there's one particular case. His visa expires tomorrow. So he can't... obviously, he can't apply for another visa at the minute because it expires tomorrow. He has to get a salvoconducto, but he can't get a meeting. And obviously, you have to go online, and they're only taking people who have an appointment. So he's been told he has to go to Neva to get tomorrow, and he has to be there by 8 a.m. in the morning. Now, there's a couple of issues at play there. We're in a pandemic. Okay, I know Colombia is open up for tourism, and they're encouraging people to travel, but this kind of travel, emergency traveling like this, I would have thought that Migration and the government would have said, okay, in these cases, we'll freeze time, because his big concern is that he will lose his run of visas and be unable to get residency. So he's in a bit of a quandary on this particular issue. It seems a bit odd.
Yeah, I mean, and going to Neva as well, I mean, yeah, it just seems bizarre. I mean, I still suspect that the visa authorities are still going to look kindly upon people acting in good faith. Let's see what happens, down at the end of it. But yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation, I think, for many people sort of stuck in these situations.
Well, I think because it kind of, it ties in maybe with what we're going to talk about next, because it may be if Migration want to ramp up the number of cases they can take on, well, how about, providing intense training for a couple of weeks for the number of people that are unemployed? Now, we've seen unemployment fall, apparently, but if you're a woman,
down.
Not so. So where are we? Employment figures have come out, and really, it's a bit of, to use an old Irish expression, a curate's egg. It's good in parts and bad in other parts. It's hard to make head nor tail, quite literally, out of these.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's either up or it's down, depending on how you look at it. Compared to last month, it's massively down. compared to this time last year, it's about double. So not ideal. We've lost about 9 percentage points from July in August, so that's positive. On the other hand, it's double the rate it was a year ago, which is problematic. It says that the report yesterday said that 3 million job positions have been retaken, have picked up again after they'd been cut, which to me does seem like a surprisingly high number because, and I don't know, I didn't kind of get into the report enough to see if that was counting informal work. I would suppose it would have to be. I can't believe that there'd be 3 million jobs that have been, restated without including informal labour. But either way, I mean, I'll tell you, Brendan, it passes the eye test. I was out earlier today wandering around with the dogs. Pretty much everything's back up and running full pelt.
Yeah, I guess I have to agree. Still, traffic isn't at full pelt, thankfully.
No.
That I guess means that those who can still work from home are working from home. Indeed, my ex-employer, and I know we're going to be talking about jobs and employment and different things in the next half hour, but I know from DDB, I've been dealing with human resources there the last couple of weeks. Nobody's back in the office of the normal staff, only now and again management and things like that until at least January of next year. So a lot of offices like that, people just aren't back. And of course, yourself, you're not back.
Yeah, no, we're not going back. A number of universities, I think, did go back this week. I think 25 universities in Bogotá are having presential classes again. We're certainly not until next year. Again, at least we don't know if that will be extended. Who knows? People are starting to talk now about the possibility of a second wave in Colombia, but hasn't gone too far into the news at the moment. Just a few sort of scattered warnings here and there. Hard to say what's going to happen in reality.
Yeah, I guess if you look at what's happening in Europe, and it's probably not a good comparison, but in your own country, Ireland as well, we're kind of regressing, it would seem. But here, difficult because certainly the focus seems to be now on getting people to get back to the new normal, as we say. Just in relation to the jobs, again, I must mention the travel industry still is obviously suffering badly because, 15,000 visited and a third of those, so 5,000 tourists.
Remember, that's just foreign tourists. Don't forget there's domestic tourism as well.
Yeah, but because I was talking to somebody who works in this, it's actually going to be my next video podcast, which will be going live tomorrow morning on my YouTube channel. Yeah, there you go. But she's completely reliant on the foreign market, but she's just wrote off the next. She has something planned for December. She's fingers crossed that it'll happen, but she pretty much wrote off the rest of the year. Internal tourism, I don't know. Are people just going? I'm reluctant to travel. Still.
I have to say, I'm seeing, WhatsApp notifications, Facebook statuses, all kinds of things from friends, buggering off to fincas and mucking about in swimming pools in Hiradot and Melgar and all that kind of thing. I absolutely do think that there's domestic tourism going on. Maybe not, large scale domestic tourism. I don't think people are necessarily doing a lot of, weeking on the coast or that sort of thing. But yeah, weekend sort of close by. I think that's happening for sure.
Yeah. Well, you see, I know what's going on, but I get personally, you see, I prefer to go to a place at this moment in time where I knew somebody, where I could stay with them and be a bit more relaxed. Because, one of the things I like is rock up in a new place where I know nobody, but you go down to the local tienda, you have a couple of drinks and you get to know people, you walk around. And now, obviously, I can go to those pueblos, but just minus the interaction that I would have had pre-COVID-19. That's the thing that kind of sucks the life out of it for me. If you're kind of stuck in I won't say stuck in the hotel, but you go about and you do your touristy bits or whatever, but then at night time there's not much to do. That would be
I mean, I suppose you'd have to look at where you are. I mean, Bogotá's pretty active in the nights. I was happily having a few pints last night with the Bogotá Post editor. It was very, very relaxing. Police turned up at 9 o'clock, I think. I suppose. No, very much not. Turning up, I think, to say to the owners, look, we're not going to shut you down right now, but don't take the piss, okay? And then about 10 o'clock, we were pretty much on out. I don't think they'd have let us order another beer, even if we'd have wanted to. Okay. But the point is, I mean, okay, you can't go out dancing, which I imagine really, is a sore point for many Colombians. But certainly going out, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as long as the bar's open, you can go out. As long as the restaurant's open, you can go out. They're being flexible reasonably with closing times. I hate to say it, Brendan, I think it's being handled quite well at the moment.
Why would you hate to say it? Do you want to have an attack on
I'm naturally suspicious of those that govern us, let's say. But yeah, and I'm a little bit wary about pulling the tiger's tail. When you talk about good fortune, it has a habit of changing. So yeah, let's say guarded. It's going okay for now.
Well, I put it this way, in a sentence. At this moment in time, I'm happy that I'm in Colombia and not in Ireland or the UK, the way those two countries are going in terms of restrictions. Yeah, I think there's a much more freedom here. In theory, anyway. Maybe if I was back in the west of Ireland, in the countryside, I'd realise that it's a bit more open than it seems when you're reading. There's just one thing that came up today that I wanted to mention. Do you like people who wear hoodies, Ollie?
Where is this going?
I'm just asking.
Do you want me to do a David Cameron and say I'll hug a hoodie?
It's gone over my head or whatever David Cameron said on that one. I missed that. But no, it's that there's been ongoing debates since obviously these violent protests now, 3-4 weeks ago, and the protests from last November and things like that. And obviously we've been talking about this in all our previous episodes, which of course, guys, you can check out on the Bogotá Post Facebook page, or indeed on my own Wrong Way Corrigan blog Facebook page. There should be links. If you go into the video section, you'll find all our previous episodes, all our previous shows, so do check them out. But in terms of these protests and the ongoing debate of how they should be managed, one thing that kind of amused me was that they're looking at banning the wearing of hoodies, or what do they call them?
Oh, really? Yeah, I hadn't seen this. I mean, that's going to be an interesting one to cool when they're simultaneously demanding that everybody wears masks. That seems counterproductive. It just seems to me like bringing in something that's barely enforceable and certainly won't be enforced on the time. And what are you going to do? You've got a few thousand protesters. Somebody's got a hoodie in their bag. They reasonably say they've got it in there for later when it's cold. They take the hoodie out of the bag. They slip it on their face. What are you going to do? Run and arrest them? I mean, you'd run in to crack their heads anyway, given that there's seems to be little or no control over the police at the moment. So where's the difference? This just seems to me like, again, it's one of Colombia's great problems. Let's make another law, Brendan. So let's prove that we're earning our money as politicians. Let's make another law. Let's write down another document on another piece of paper that everyone can go on ignoring. It's just an enormous... What we need to do is start enforcing these laws, not make more of them. It just seems to me very, very bizarre. I mean, I saw the same thing. What's very interesting for me, and I think this is something we should be covering later when it's fully developed, but what's happening at the moment, what we have the start of, is very much a clash between the mayor of Bogotá and the National Police Force. And it seems to me this is one of the more extraordinary things I've seen since I live in Colombia. I wrote an article a few months ago about how the police were essentially ignoring Claudia Lopez's lockdown restrictions and just enforcing whatever law they felt like enforcing. And I said, it seems like she has no control over the police. She's candidly admitted that now. After that chaos at the beginning of last month, she's candidly admitting that the police are ignoring her. And, and now she's off, kind of sending in videos of police acting inappropriately and all kinds of things and making accusations. It seems bizarre. Absolutely bizarre to see. These are two institutions that I would not expect to see fighting, and very unusual. I don't know where that's going, and like I say, I think it'll be a few weeks before we really understand what the story is here, but something's happening, and it's odd.
Yeah. Just one word on that. Well, just when you're saying that, because I think was it Claudia Lopez that called for the disbanding of the transit police, which I'm kind of thinking of all the police.
It seems
they're
odd.
probably the least ones to worry about. But anyway,
it's this whole, let's disband them. Oh, right, okay, that's fine. If we just disband them, the problem will go away. Of course it won't. You'll just have people in different uniforms, creating the same problems. It's a cultural problem. It's not by which I mean culture of the police and of enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
But like I say, there's a lot in that story, and it won't become clear for months.
Yeah, it's certainly something we'll come back to, I think, in the future. Because, the other option is you kind of go like a United States or even a Venezuela model, where you've got state police and then you've got the national police. And that to me is even more confusing for a country of this size. Well, anyway, when you look at Venezuela, anyway, it doesn't work as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, Ollie, let's move on to something more upbeat, perhaps. Are we doing our James Rodríguez watch? Or eye on James?
The name's James Rodríguez. Yeah, he's having a good. He's having a hell of a debut. Certainly all my friends back in England are raving about him. He seems to be extremely popular, not just in Everton, but in general. I think. He's kind of a pretty young lad in a certain sort of way. He's an exceptional footballer, and he seems to have clicked straight away into the Premier League. It wasn't a Premier League match this week against West Ham. It was League Cup, but it is Premier League level opposition. And yet again, he's providing assists. He's a creative spark of the team, and he's second in the conga line for dancing. Third in the conga line for dancing.
But obviously, it's provided a bit of a shot in the arm for Everton Football Club as well, top of the league. They play, I think it's Brighton on Saturday, I believe, at home. 3 points, considering the way they're playing, should be on offer there. So they'll go into the international break probably sitting on top of the pile. 4 games in, they'll nearly have enough points accrued to avoid relegation. A lot of speculation, Brendan, about them potentially doing a Leicester. The only problem is that Leicester might be doing a Leicester as well this year, so hard to know. But certainly, nobody was saying they're going to do a Leicester about Leicester at the time. It'd be another team that you weren't expecting, really.
Exactly, and both Manchester clubs in trouble. Chelsea haven't started brightly. Arsenal do look to be resurgent. Tottenham are still in a bit of a Mourinho funk. This is a good year to have a real crack at the top of the league, I think.
Yeah, no, it certainly could work. One thing I noticed, and I actually did a little bit of an investigation. You see, I do work for this Bogotá Nights, despite what you all think. I do. But I called into a sports shop just asking them, had they the Everton jersey? And they didn't, of course. Now, it was one in the barrio here, so it wasn't any well-known place. But I asked the guy then, I said, like, is there any demand or people asking for the Everton shirt? Because obviously when James joined Real Madrid, everybody seemed to get a Real Madrid top, and then he went to Bayern Munich and they all got Bayern Munich tops. Certainly the Bayern Munich top was more available on the street.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So the guy told me that people have been asking, and he said they hope to have a few in a few weeks' time. Of course, if Everton Football Club is thinking that this is going to make money for them, they're all going to be chiviados, as they would say here.
Brendan, are you insinuating that some of these might not be official Adidas or Nike, branded stuff?
Well, of course, I only pay for the official branded stuff, but I've heard it said that some of these may not be actually made by Adidas or whoever else it is. I don't know what is the kit maker for Everton. I'm not sure. Umbro, is it? Or are they still on the go?
I haven't got a clue.
Anyway, but James is going to be with us next week here on Bogotá Nights. He's going to pop in. We're going to have a chat with him. No, he's going to be in the country, of course, in Barranquilla, yes. I guess, yeah, is where they're going to be based. I actually do have some inside info on that because Des McAleenan, an Irishman, is the goalkeeping coach for La Selección de Colombia. So he told me so they'll be meeting up in Spain, flying out, and because he's in Dublin, he went back to Dublin for the lockdown and all that stuff. And then he said they're probably just going to be based up in Barranquilla around there, so they're not even going to come to Bogotá, which is unfortunate because in another world, if COVID didn't come along, we would have had a big Copa America game here in Bogotá.
Of course.
The summer just gone. So, yeah, there you go. Gone. But hopefully, maybe it will come back in the future. We've nothing else on sport, Ollie. Kind of quiet enough on that front.
Well, there's tennis. But it's the French Open. It's to be honest, I don't even know if it is the French Open. It's Roland Garros.
It is the French Open. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yes, a relatively unknown Colombian tennis player is going to be going up against Djokovic in the next round, which means he'll be bulldozed past. And I don't know, tennis is not a game that thrills me, I have to be honest with you.
Okay. I got into it a few years ago. Mentioning Djokovic, of course, there's always the risk that he might get disqualified if he throws a ball at one of the umpires or lines people, whatever they're called. So he'll have to be on good behaviour. I don't mind tennis, but whatever happened, the two Farah and what's the other guy's name?
Yes, Farah and
whoever's listening in can write in the names of those guys. Let us know.
That pair. I should be talking to us. Our sports editor is the man who covers these things. I don't. Yeah. He's from the famous tennis-playing nation of the Netherlands.
Of course.
Netherlands should be. I mean, the Dutch should be good at tennis. They're all, tall. You'd think they could serve well, but then you'd think the Dutch should be good at basketball. They're all 9 foot tall. Surely. If you're producing drafts.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because look, if we're saying that, then the Germans, you'd imagine, should be good at rugby, but they just don't play it. Big, strapping, strong men. But anyway, there you go.
Yeah,
Ollie, we move on to work. I want to get onto this.
Let's get into it. Yeah.
Another blast of Rihanna's work. I did say I was only going to sing once, but yeah, guys, if you're just tuning in. As we mentioned at the top of the program, our big topic. Indeed, Ollie has a column in the Bogotá Post called Ollie's Big Topic. So it's kind of Ollie's big topic. But no, we're talking about work and the various kind of options open to foreigners, generally foreigners, but also locals here in Colombia, what you can do and the various areas. Because both Ollie and I probably stuck in kind of similar areas. That sounds negative. I know you love your job, Ollie, but in relation to the language, English, teaching it or writing or whatever. But of course, there's a whole host of different jobs out there and different opportunities. So if you are listening in live, guys, let us know any unusual jobs you've heard of, an unusual job that you're doing right now, or opportunities that might be coming in this coronavirus times as well. Maybe there are new jobs here in Colombia that we can all get involved with. And if you're listening not live, that you're listening back to this, you can always tweet us at Bogotá Post or on the Facebook page that you happen to be watching this on, or if you're watching it on YouTube, which sometimes I think they're uploaded on YouTube, do drop us a line. But in terms of jobs, Ollie, I guess there are kind of a few big areas where most people gravitate towards.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, when we say most people, we're talking about, say, non-Spanish speaking immigrants like ourselves. But yeah, I mean,
sorry,
a lot of people.
Ollie, my Spanish is excellent these days.
Okay, not non-native speaking Spanish people. Non-Latin migration, we could say, I guess. But yes, so we've got. I mean, there's a lot of teachers. There's a very big number of language teachers here, English teachers, of course, but also there's a lot of German teachers, lots of French teachers. The Alianza Française is quite a big deal down in the centre there. And then there's a big appetite, I think, from Colombia to learn other languages, often connected to a need or a want to emigrate. So we've got all those people. There's a lot of NGO workers, some good, some bad, depending on who you speak to. And of course, one of the things, there's a lot of foreigners that kind of, I always think of them as being the invisible foreigners to me, who are, for example, oil workers. There's a lot of people working in oil and in mining and in lots of different fields like that, who I just never meet. We don't mix in the same circles. And then every now and again we'll be at a journalist event, and I suddenly realize, oh yeah, there's loads of these people here too. But they're all out in fancy restaurants and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, you say they're out in fancy restaurants, but obviously there's a reason to that. Number one, that they're earning ridiculous amounts of money. But also they come in those. They arrive here and they're automatically put in those bubbles because,
yeah.
For example, an Irish friend of mine who I met, and I would have never met the guy, I guess, if it wasn't for the Irish Embassy and various events that we had. And the Irish Embassy and the Irish community here being relatively small means that you get to know practically everybody in it. Indeed, we have a group, a WhatsApp group, and I was the one that founded it. Yeah, thanks, Brendan. But anyway, this guy, he works for a pharmaceutical company here, but he left just last month. But he lived in Rosales or around that neck of the woods anyway, and he was in his contract. It stipulated that if he walked over a kilometre from his house, he had to have a bodyguard.
Wow.
It's ridiculous, and you're kind of going, really? What? A
kilometre from your house? That's insane.
So I can imagine you come here and that's what you're told, and they have meetings when they come here first and told about the security and where they can't go. So they're probably going, okay, this is dangerous, I can't do anything, this is what I must do. Whereas people like you and I, we came here and kind of gave it a lash and mixed and found out that that's not too bad. Okay, you have to be careful and stuff like that, but a completely different experience compared to
absolutely, yeah. And the embassy people, of course, always have the same or similar restrictions. They're very much limited in what they can and can't do, I suppose with good reason. But yeah, no, it's interesting you use that word bubble. I personally do like the word expat, and I know it's a very controversial term. I think it's very helpful for defining a difference. People like ourselves are very much economic migrants in that we've come here to live in Colombia. We're part of Colombia. We work here. It's a long-term commitment to the country, and I think it is helpful to sort of say sometimes expat when we're talking about people that are on a fixed short-term contract. They're here for a known 1 year, 2 years. They move over their whole family. They stay in a bubble. they move back. I don't have a problem with calling those people expats, because to me that's really what they are. They're essentially not, they just happen to be doing their work in Colombia. They're not actually sort of in Colombia in terms of being part of the country. They're kind of a weird little enclave on their own. So I don't think it's a completely, I do think the way expat is used is often very kind of arrogant, and it often has this racial connotation to it. But I think there is some merit in the word if it can be decoupled from that meaning.
Yeah, I understand. Just
but there are, yeah, go on.
Well, no, I was just going to give a shout out to Paula Andrea Perez Rubiana, to give her full name, but she's an English teacher here, obviously a Colombian native, I take it, which is another hot topic when you get people saying, I want a teacher, but it has to be a native speaker.
Yeah.
And in fairness, as somebody who has taught English here, I would say, I wager anyway, that like I hate, strong word, but I don't like teaching beginners. I think Colombian natives who speak English are probably better teaching beginners. But anyway, that's another thing. Yeah. But she says she uses the Bogotá Post, Paula. She used the Bogotá Post in her classes. And of course, Paula, you can also use Wrong Way Corrigan's blog on LTMO in your classes, just to spice it up a little bit, But
or the Colombia Cast podcast for listening comprehension.
Exactly. There you go. Well, now rebranded as Wrong Ways Colombia Cast, because the Colombia Cast will bring you to Samana, and they don't deserve the hits anymore. Anyway.
But there are some fun jobs out there. I mean, we were kind of making a bit of a list yesterday, but we know people in Bogota who are brewing beer. Non-Colombians who are brewing beer.
Well, I know a few who are drinking it.
Yeah, there's plenty of them. But, there's people selling, sausages from their homelands. There's some cracking French restaurants down in the in the centre. Saint Just is a fantastic place. I'm thinking about on Parkway, there's a great Indian restaurant. So there's lots of that kind of thing service-wise. And then there's people like, I have a friend who organizes film logistics, which I just think is an incredibly interesting job, that he's got contacts from back in England. So, somebody rings up and says, hey, we'd like to film in a bit of jungle in Colombia. Can you give us any advice? And he'll say, okay, I've got a place for you. We go out here, we stay here. And he does all the organizational stuff and sorting out their kit and all that sort of thing. Really interesting job. And there's a few.
That job's been badly hit.
I'd assume so. I haven't spoken to him in a while, to be honest. Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, you would have thought he'd be maybe in trouble. And then, of course, there's the digital nomads and the crypto people.
A world that I know very little about, to be honest. If you know more about it. Oh, okay. You're not a big fan of it. But
I'm not a massive
fan. Just
going
on hints that you've dropped before, most of them would tend to base themselves in Medellin.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you go to Poblado and you'll find plenty of guys, and they are guys inevitably, going on at great length about how fiat currency isn't worth anything, and it just does my head in. And then there's people down. We've been talking about tourism recently, but Julia down in the Llanos, running a kind of Colombian cow person experience out in the Llanos. That's a fun little thing. There's lots of people working in tourism here. Then, of course. Mm-hmm. And then there's people like ourselves at the Bogotá Post, or our rivals at the City Paper. So there is quite a lot going on. I always think that you're not always quite aware of, and then you suddenly find out, there's foreigners kind of littered throughout things, as of course there would be in London, and I'm sure in Dublin.
I guess I just kind of assumed wrongly that the majority would be in education and those related fields, and as you said, in NGOs and things like that. I do have an interesting husband and wife couple, and they're both foreigners, I'll say. I won't use expats. The husband being a greenskeeper or greenkeeper, and the wife a voiceover artist. She actually has a small little studio in their apartment to do the voiceovers. So that's a rather odd mix and interesting. Now, the greenskeeper, I have to say, people might kind of think it sounds a little like belittling or whatever, but this guy has traveled all over the world with this job. Like, he's a degree in agronomy, so it's not just a case of cutting grass. There's a lot of science behind this. And it's in El Country, the Bogotá. So
I'm sure they take
elite of the elite, yeah. And every February, unfortunately, it's been cancelled for next February, but I was there this February. They have like a second division tournament on I think it's called the Corn Ferry now. It changes its name with the sponsorship, which is second to the main PGA tour in the States. So if it's like if you get top in that tour, you'll qualify then to the PGA tour. So El Country has that. So that's a big tournament for him. But it's a fascinating job. Like, as I said, he's been all over the world: Dubai, Cyprus, Barbados, and now he's here in Colombia, working in El Country. And I don't think the pay is too bad either, as you can imagine.
Oh, I'm sure the country club are not short of the odd bob. But let's move on to talk about offices here. I mean, I work in I don't at the moment, of course. My office is just full of, animals. But to be fair,
always the way.
This is my current little secretary in here. She's sleeping away.
Oh, okay.
But when I'm in my normal work, I'm absolutely in a Colombian environment. There's no kind of. I used to work in the main English department. I don't anymore. And what that means is that there's no, again, going back to that thing of bubbles, when we worked for the English department, we absolutely were kept sort of insulated from a lot of stuff, and, translations were done for us and all that kind of thing. That's definitely not the case in my work at the moment. I mean, I'm expected to work completely in Spanish, which I don't have a problem with, other than giving class, of course. And it's a weird environment. And of course, you've worked in Spanish-speaking offices here as well, haven't you?
Yeah, very much in an office where you get the fresh out of college guys, fresh out of university. Might as well give them a shout out. My ex-employer, DDB Worldwide Colombia, well-known marketing agency, of course. Just Brendan and third-party marketing wasn't a match made in heaven, put it that way. But the office environment, it was interesting because prior to that, of course, I worked as a freelance independent and wasn't in that environment at all. So there was certainly a novelty factor at the beginning, but open plan. There were about 50, 60 people on my floor. What was different, because you see, even in Ireland and in the UK, if I can say that, in Northern Ireland, I worked in broadcasting and radio, so not your normal office environment. So this was really my first kind of standard office job. Have you got an episode of The Fast and Furious on there, Molly? I can hear
no, it's
wild there.
I've never understood those guys. Never understood it.
Or whatever that guy is called to come in next. But yeah, so the office, it was I've nothing really to compare it to. They were all pretty young guys. The hours, of course, were ridiculous. Now, I was pretty lucky in that regard. But I'm told this is across the board in marketing agencies. Guys working minimum 15-hour days. And the bonus, get this, like the standard hour was meant to be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with a 2-hour lunch break. I never get that. I'm like, what are you doing for 2 hours?
No, yeah, totally.
45 minutes lunch break enough, and then leave earlier. That's what I think it should be. But anyway, that aside, Colombians do work long hours. Now, I've said this umpteen times before. There's a big difference between being at work and doing work.
Yes,
and,
that's
so there is that element to it. But still, at the same time, like you might have a soft day, and then all of a sudden the client wants things at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and guys were stuck there until midnight. They would get a bonus. I got this once, 10,000 pesos. And it didn't matter if you worked 5 hours overtime or 10 hours overtime. You just got a coupon, a voucher that could be spent in Éxito or Coruja or any that were part of that group, the Éxito group.
All right. So it's not even actual money that you can, it's restricted money. Wow.
Exactly.
That's pretty special. Pretty special. I mean, yeah, I'd agree with you. Comically long, well, I suppose tragically long working hours are de rigueur here. As is working on Saturday. I mean, my contract says I work on Saturdays, which I do occasionally give class on Saturdays, but luckily we're not expected to deal with it. But certainly for many of my friends, that's absolutely expected. Saturday is very much a working day. And again, you often hear these stereotypes, don't you? Lazy Latinos, Colombians don't like working. I'd like to see many of my British friends put in a 15-hour day without complaining. And I'd like to see them put in a 15-hour day and then, commute for an hour and a half back to their house.
Yeah, and get up the next morning and do it all again with the same enthusiasm. I know, I'm amazed. I mean, look at it. I say this, and I use the Spanish sobreviví. I survived in that marketing agency for 14 months, and I had it relatively easy. Now, of course, there were other issues at play as well, but I just thought the hours were ridiculous. But nobody complains because there's a fear that, well, I'll lose my job, then what am I going to do? So
yes. And I think employers do. I think that's one of the biggest shocks for people working here is how much power in reality employers have and how frequently they kind of abuse that. Now, I'm lucky in my position. That's not something I have to deal with. But it's something that lots of my Colombian friends have complained about is, really appalling treatment in places where I would, one of my ex-girlfriends, I remember her saying to me once that she really liked her boss because he'd got to where he was on merit, and he wasn't just a political appointment, somebody's friend or family member or whatever. And I remember just being astonished that would be considered so, like, it wouldn't be, in my head, it's the unusual case where there's a nepotistic appointment. But actually, from her point of view, it's completely opposite. The idea of not having a nepotistic appointment was what was weird. Shocking stuff. Really surprising.
Yeah, a couple of jobs. I know we're kind of coming close to the time. You mentioned the film industry. I just wanted to come back to that as well. Obviously, extras, and we touched on this in previous episodes, but the movie and extra world, it's still an option for some people because if you're relatively, well, I don't know to even say good looking. I don't know. If you fit a certain profile that these people look for commercials, as they say in the States, or ads, as we would say, you in theory, you can make a great living out of it. Some of these ads or commercials pay like 2 million a go if you're
but listen, Brendan, I used to be a bicycle messenger, and there's always that guy that goes, oh yeah, back in the late 90s, I had a month that was definitely where I earned £10,000 or something. There's always that thing. I mean, I'm sure those commercials absolutely do exist. I mean, I'm not suggesting they don't exist. I think you'd be very lucky to get a number. To be getting, say, 2 million commercials a month every month for a whole year. You'd be really lucky, I think.
Yeah, and then of course there'd also be rights in terms of your image being used and blah 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 blah, things like that.
Yeah.
But again, discrepancies in that industry, and this is something I wrote about on my blog. Like standard extras, foreigners can expect to at least get 100,000, maybe 150,000. Now the days again could be long; it could be on set for 15 hours. But locals, I remember they were paying locals 20,000 for the exact same hours.
Yeah, disgraceful.
Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, shocking. But also linked to that then, and this came a big topic because influencers is a new thing if you ever get lucky enough. And the shocking news that has come out, and I'm not having a go because I'm in a lucha right now as well for a visa. But a well-known influencer for this country, a German guy, Dominic, has just been refused his visa residency. And would you believe, Ollie, already a change.org campaign has been launched. And apparently somebody told me 2 or 3 hours ago, it had only been launched a few hours ago, and a couple of hours into it being launched, already had 7,000 signatures.
7,000, unbelievable.
Yeah. So this man could end up, having a campaign. Apparently, it did happen to another influencer, a certain Zach Morris, who got citizenship in the end.
I mean, just absolutely. I mean, some of these things. I think it looks desperate of Colombia when they accede to this sort of demand. I'm very rarely a fan. There's a whole cottage industry, you're right, in basically making a video where you run about saying, aren't empanadas great? I really love arepa de huevo. And people, and you just get millions of people saying, oh yeah, I really like that too. It's amazing. And yeah, I mean, there are so many interesting stories to tell about Bogota and about Colombia. And it's so sad that we just focus repetitively on these, absolute dross at times, Having said that, I'm not particularly au fait with Dominic's work. He may be very...
Well, I don't know. I don't know either.
No, wait. He was the guy, if I remember correctly, he's the guy that sort of waved the Colombia jersey or the Colombia flag at the Brandenburg Gate and said something like he was the first person to do it, which I thought, come on, I'm sure you're not even the first German, let alone, there will definitely have been Colombians on holiday waving a Colombian flag. I cannot believe that hasn't happened in the past, 50, 60 years or whatever.
Look,
yeah,
Ali,
I do.
Yeah. I think we should have another chat perhaps about that
Wrap it up.
And another episode, because it's fascinating. I do find it fascinating. Now, you mentioned in passing a arepa de huevo. We're going to be doing our own bit to try and get
they are nice.
News. Yeah,
I do like them. That wasn't a joke.
Yeah, I know. Next week we are going to be talking about food in Colombia, and I'm a big fan of my street food as well. Give me a pastel de yuca or papa rellena, empanada. I'll eat a lot of them. I don't mind them at all. I think it was what was that famous French? Was it French? He committed suicide there a few years ago. Chef, traveler as well.
Anthony Bourdain.
Anthony Bourdain, yeah, he said the street food is one of the most underappreciated foods in the world. So
I go along with that. Yeah. That's not an unreasonable call.
But that's what we're going to be talking about next week, Ollie. Yes. Food.
Yeah, there's nothing like an Irishman talking about potatoes.
Stereotypes, I love them.
Well, I guess that's all for tonight then.
It is indeed. Okay. Good night, guys, and thanks for listening.
See you next week.
Talking to post. Bye bye.